as we start too, that I will have to leave. I have another meeting at 1:45, so I have to sign off a little before that. So I apologize for that. But these Zoom meetings, it's so funny. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like I'm busier now going from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom than I was before. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or at least try to answer any questions you might have. There's a lot of stuff that we really don't know yet. Like some people ask about fall, and we really don't know about fall. Couple things. I'll just briefly touch on two things. There's lots of topics, but two topics that come to mind that I hear a lot about right now. One is with respect to final exams. So final exams are, by the university policy, are, if you're doing it synchronously, it has to be at the time in which your final exam was originally scheduled. So you can't say, well, I know we were scheduled to do this on Monday morning, but I want to do it Wednesday afternoon. You can't do that. And if you're going to give students like an hour and 15 minutes, but a big span of time in which to do it, make sure you include that original time. So that way a student would know that they don't have, they don't have a conflict in the time span you've given them. So that's one thing. There's also a really useful website on different ways you can proctor. So if you're interested in proctoring, there are different ways where that's acceptable. One way that I don't think anybody in our college is doing it, but just so you know, they'll mention this tool called Examity, which is a private company that proctors. That costs money. Is depending on what level you get, so it's $3.50 or $5 per test, per person per test. So if you have 50 people taking the test, and it's $5, it's going to be $250. Don't sign up for that. Don't say you're going to do that unless your department head or your unit person has given you the green light, because somebody has to pay that money, and so you need to check with your department head before you sign up for that. The other thing is with summer courses. So it's really, summer will all be either online or remote, and it's really up to, I think we've gotten all the information already about summer, but basically we're asking people whether or not they want to teach it remotely or online. If it's some kind of hybrid, it'll still be count as remote in terms of coding it, but we need to have that information in order to code it into LionPath for some record keeping purposes. So anyway, but that's really up to you and your department and what you think is works the best given your resources and the pedagogical needs of the course. So that's really, a local decision that you can make, but we just need to know what the decision you've made is so we can code it correctly in LionPath. So anyway, I'll see the chat. So I'm happy to take any questions. Okay, so yeah, so Dave's thinking about 5 a.m. I wanted to get some information on that. I mean, so I'm not sure how to handle that if you're like 8 a.m. final and you have somebody in California. I mean, basically, if you're doing it synchronously, you have to offer it from 8 to 9:50. I don't know if there's some way to schedule.
Can I just tell you what I did for my midterm?
Yeah.
I want to see if this is all right. See, I had a 1 hour midterm after we had already started this. So I gave a 1 hour exam, but I gave, I believe, maybe a 3.5 hour time window total to do it. And that was also enough to accommodate any SDR students I had as well. So I just did that. I guess I didn't really ask permission of anybody to do that. I just did it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's sort of like the common sense solution. And that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. If you make a window, just make sure it includes your original time.
Okay, that could also then overlap with other final exam schedules is the risk.
Right, but I'm just thinking about in the perspective of somebody from California. What you're really saying is, I know this is 5 o'clock in the morning, but if you want to, you can wait and take it at 7. Right. But if you have a conflict, if you have another exam at 7, they're just going to have to get up and take it at 5 in the morning. I mean, there's a limit to how much you can do.
I mean, I can say what I did for one of my courses is I created a form and I said, if you can't take the exam at the regularly scheduled time, just fill out this form. And I had 2 students from Korea and I just let them take it, 2 days later. It didn't really matter to me, to be honest. And so if you have one student, I think you could justify moving their exam to a different time that they don't have a conflict with.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think the whole purpose of the policy is you don't want to put a student in an impossible situation, and you're not doing that, right? You're working with them to find a time that will work for them. And I think that's perfectly okay.
And I look at it as, if you had a student get sick and they need to reschedule it, I kind of think this is kind of the same thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've all had those experiences where we've taught long enough, or, I mean, I've had students who, I had a student one time who literally, had an accident the day of the exam and couldn't come. But I didn't say, "Oh, I'm so sorry you failed," because it was, you just find another time they do it. Yeah.
From an administrator, I'm the DUS in economics, so you know that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Many others do, but we have had in our department, and I've tried to tell faculty not to do this. I've told our faculty members, I've said, try to be understanding and lenient.
Yeah.
This is new to not only you, but to students. So I said, don't do extreme punishments like if a student uploads a paper 2 minutes late, don't refuse to take it and give them a 0.
Yeah.
I've said, don't do that. Now, but we've still had some trouble with it. I've had a lot of student complaints saying, hey, the instructor didn't take my work and I had internet problems because at home I don't have, this. So how strong of a message can we give to our faculty that says, be lenient, be accepting, but I don't want to step on your toes and micromanage you?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the dean feels really strongly, and I share this feeling too, that, I mean, if something's 2 minutes late, they should go ahead and accept it, right? Because of the reasons you just stated. And I would just emphasize that. Now there's, there's a limit to how much you can, I think if you really feel like the faculty member is being unreasonable, then I think you need to talk to the department head and have a department head talk to them. But, and the thing about reasonableness, obviously that's, kind of in some cases, a judgment call, like 2 minutes. Well, that, of course, they should accept it. What about 10 minutes? What about a half an hour? What about 2 hours? Where do you draw the line? So then there's a point at which reasonable minds might differ. But I think in general, I think you're doing exactly the right thing, Dave. And if you feel like somebody really is being unreasonable, I think it's worth talking to the department head and just say, look, I don't, and have the department head talk to the person.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let me tell you another thing that I've heard a lot of concerns about is academic integrity. And there has been in contact with Andrew Peck, and a couple things I want to reiterate. First of all, there has been just a flood of academic integrity cases. The committee, I think, in this past week spent 5 hours going over. These are faculty members and students, graduate students and undergraduate students who are full-time, right? Either as students or as faculty, or if they're graduate students, they're full-time students and are also teaching themselves in many cases. And they spent 5 hours going through academic integrity cases this week, and it'll probably just get worse in the next couple of weeks. This is always a busy time. So I think that's both a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it's a bad thing that it's such a stressful thing for them. In many ways, it's bad that we have so many academic integrity cases. But the good piece of it is that people are taking it seriously. There are students who are, there are cases of concern that are being brought forth. They're being treated fairly with due process. We always want students to get the chance to tell their side of the story. And so the one thing I want to emphasize is that just because we're doing things remotely, the academic integrity process is still the same, and academic integrity standards are still the same. So plagiarism is still plagiarism, cheating is still cheating. And if someone's doing that, there's a form that I can share the link that's really easy to do online to report what your concerns are. But it is very important that we have due process and give the student a chance to tell their side of the story. The analogy I often make is like, if you're pulled over for speeding, the policeman gives you a ticket, and obviously all the time it's very clear that you were speeding, but you always get a chance to go present your case, and you don't present it to the police officer, you present it to a third party, right? And I think for our students that they, if anyone's accused of wrongdoing, they should have the opportunity to present their side of the case to a third party, not the person who's accusing them of wrongdoing. So, and that's just to say that we take academic integrity very seriously, but we also take due process seriously. Oh, thank you, Andrew. Andrew's here. Thank you, Andrew. So, Andrew, anything you want to add?
Thanks, Richard. Maybe just one thing. We're starting to see a lot of students who aren't sure what parts of the syllabus have carried over into remote learning. And so this is especially of concern when it comes to exams and policies involving permissible and prohibited sources and permissible and prohibited collaboration. And so I see a lot of departmental leaders in the chat today. And so maybe one friendly thing we could be doing is reminding people to share that information with our students.
I think that's a good point, Andrew. I realized that, when I updated my syllabus, I'm not sure I changed. I mean, we talked with students about how it was going to work, but I don't know if I put it in the syllabus. Does that have implications if you want to go forward with a violation of academic integrity?
It does for sure, both in determining whether or not the evidence of misconduct rises to the university's criteria. Mm-hmm. And most recently, it makes it really hard on the committee to determine an appropriate punishment when the student's confused, but they've accepted responsibility. The move to alternative grades has also complicated this somewhat. So there's slightly different information on remote-learning.psu.edu and remote teaching. And some of our faculty are interpreting this information differently. And so we're still waiting on some guidance from this, but I think where we've landed is that if an academic integrity sanction is strong enough to affect the course grade for a student, they're going to lose the opportunity to choose an alternative grade. And so there's an awful lot of angst and anger when that happens in a situation where there's some confusion about the syllabus and what's transferred and what's prohibited, and what's permissible.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Andrew said, I mean, what strikes me is in this environment, I think communication in general, but especially between faculty and students is often difficult. You think that you made something clear and someone says, well, you never said that, or we didn't know, but I think it's doubly difficult in a remote environment. So just in general, if you think something's important, it's always good to have it in writing, either on a syllabus or in an email that you communicated to everybody, or both. There's no reason it shouldn't be in both places, but I think that's a really important piece to put things in writing, and ask if you have any questions, please let me know so you can follow up if there is a misunderstanding even after you put it in writing.
Can I ask a question about, I'm pretty sure I'm okay with this, but sort of tamping down the exam which I'm going to be given. Again, it's already set up for the times and stuff, but what if I decided to do something where it was over the span of, say, 5 hours as opposed to an hour and 50 minutes? What would prevent a student from taking the exam, taking pictures of the exam questions, getting done, and sending to a friend who's not doing well so they can look up the answers?
I'm not a technology expert, but I think that's the problem with having extended windows is
Yes.
it increases the likelihood of cheating and the ease of cheating. And you could imagine people, you know, someone has their friend who's an A student and they take it at the early window and then they share it with their friend who's a weaker student who takes it the later window. I mean, I think that's a real risk. Maybe somebody here has a know-how of how to, I mean, you do things like you can have exams. So like they're randomized questions or randomized answers. I mean, you do something like that. So they're not all the same.
To be fair, that could even happen during a 2-hour window.
That's right.
Takes it immediately and starts to share answers later. But yeah, to your point, the longer the time window, the more risk that becomes. And I've shared some advice with our department is that if you have an auto graded exam on Canvas, mute the grade book so it doesn't show you your score after submission until you show that. Algorithmic questions are good. Test banks are good. I mean, the more complicated it is, the longer it takes you to make it, unfortunately. But I found that muting the grade book for assignments that are auto graded, muting the grade book seems to help because it doesn't let students know what answers they got right or wrong. And that's a little bit of a deterrent.
That's
Awesome,
smart.
great.
I mean, some other, things that you can do is you can create a bank of questions. Again, this takes a lot longer. And then you have to worry about difficulty and kind of making sure that students get, kind of same level of difficulty. But that is another way that you can kind of deter that. But yes, it's an issue.
Yeah, I teach courses online through World Campus, so that's already, I know how that works. And just making that transition over of trying to use the same exam and not having to create 3 times as many questions.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So Richard, I had a question.
Yeah.
That I think you may have addressed elsewhere, but I'm assuming we're going to start getting questions from students about what grade they should take in our course and whether or not they should, which option they should take. We're supposed to push them to their advisor, correct? In terms of getting help with that.
Yeah, I would, because I think one thing I would always emphasize to every student is that, the best choice for you is going to depend on is what's best for your academic situation. And you're the one who's really responsible for determining that. Because because I think the student does need to take responsibility for that decision. And sometimes there are factors that are invisible to the, to the instructor. So I'll give you a couple of examples for that. There are a couple of majors that have, for particular courses, and if you're teaching this course, you may be aware of it, but they have an entrance to major requirement of B or better, or B+ or better. Well, there are students like this out there. They want to make summa cum laude. They're making an A- in the course. They want to take, they think, well, maybe it's in my interest to take the satisfactory because then I'll keep my straight A average. But then the satisfactory doesn't satisfy the entrance to major requirement. So another factor is if someone's applying to med school. It's a very unusual semester, but typically the standard advice to students who want to go to med school is don't take anything pass fail, because people will just assume the worst and they really want to see how well you did. So you're better off taking a B than you are taking a pass. And so there are a lot of factors like that would be invisible to you as an instructor.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always be hesitant. I mean, on the one hand, it seems like really simple, right? You say, well, I'm a B student. If I make less than the B in a course, my overall GPA is B. If I can make less than the B in the course and make B-, C+, I should do the satisfactory. If I get better in B, I shouldn't. I should take the grade, but it's not always that simple.
Yeah. I think Robert asked a relevant question in the chat about whether advisors have been contacted.
Yeah, so the thing about the advisors, they know this really well. They also know different scenarios better than most. They know how Schreier is dealing with it. They know how Paterno Fellows is dealing with it. There's some really kind of arcane things having to do with credit counting and progress towards major, things that are, should not be impacted by people taking these kinds of grades, but it's still very important that the advisors know a lot about these kind of finer points that, again, I think are really invisible to most faculty members. Yeah, I agree with all the speaking about taking proactive. And that's not to say that you can't, share maybe what your thoughts are, but I would always just couch it with a lot of caveats, or maybe things I don't know. You should definitely talk to your advisor, because to make sure that, if you're thinking about satisfactory, I can see why you might think that's a good move, but I would definitely talk to your advisor to make sure that's in your best interest. And they have time after they get their final grade to make that decision.
Was there ever a decision made? Because I had asked this earlier, and I don't remember if it was ever answered. When this policy first came out, my question was, is the action reversible or undoable? Like if they pick the satisfactory and then say, oh, wait, I wanted the letter grade, can they go back somehow later and change that? Has that been determined yet?
Yeah, you know what, Dave, you did ask that, and let me double check on that. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. I think that they can petition to change it back, is my understanding. Do you know, Josh? I see you.
I think they petition through the faculty senate as they would any kind of normal grade adjudication process. That's
right.
Beyond the, I'm assuming now, I don't know, in that 1 week time frame that they have, can they go in and change it multiple times? I don't know that.
Yeah, so there are two kind of wrinkles to this. My understanding is that they can't, once they select it and say submit, they have to petition. And the other kind of wrinkle that's come up is, what if a student takes a deferred grade? Can they then do an alternative grade? And the timeline's all screwed up if you do a deferred grade, right? Because you do the deferred grade, and it's after you actually give the regular grade after grades are normally due. So in that case, they can still get the alternative grade, but there again, they would have to petition. So you may have students asking you that. So again, the short answer is yes, you can still take the alternative grade, but it's more cumbersome. You'd have to file a petition. So I'm happy to answer questions as long as possible. We can also move on to other stuff. Like I think we're going to talk about summer and finals, and like how you're using COVID-19, how that's affecting your teaching and your research, and are the ways that you're using COVID-19 in your classes, like to kind of inform what's going on in class. If anybody has stuff about that, I'd kind of be interested in hearing it.
I just briefly, I teach macroeconomics, and so a great interest in how the economy is doing, obviously. So it's a natural thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Kind of grim in a way, but.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of unprecedented, isn't it? With basically economy like shutting itself down on,
yes.
intentionally.
Yes. It's very quick and rapid. Usually recessions start a little bit on the gradual side. They're not obvious when they're starting. This was very obvious, and moves to counteract it usually come later, if at all. And now these started within the same month. So it's really unusual, but it is a double whammy in how it's affecting things.
So when should I
ask me there? I'm sorry.
When should I start putting money back in the stock market?
You talk about that a bit, but it's very hard to time. Is the generic answer.
I know I teach sociology, and at the beginning of each of my classes, I just sort of say, hey, how's things going? You want to talk about anything? How's life? Where you're living at? How is it in California? I have a couple of students who are in downtown New York City, Brooklyn, and just let them talk for a little bit. It seems to be helping them, and sometimes it's you can just tell it's good to get it off the chest because they have no one else to be able to talk to.
Yeah. I kind of gave that advice to someone who's searching for a job. I teach 100-level course, but I still have some seniors given how things work out. And, at the start of this semester, the job market is quite good. Now it's not. And, he asked for advice, and that was one of them, was to work with other people just so you don't feel so lonely and in the struggle.
Oh yeah. So Dave has a couple questions here in the chat. Is there a date that the university will make a decision for fall by? Well, I think the provost, what I'm hearing is that there should be a decision made by mid to late June. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully we'll know by then. And the second question is, we do have fall resident courses. Will the university keep the dorms open over Thanksgiving and discourage international travel? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I think the speculation is, if we do have in-person classes in fall, then it probably won't look like it does normally, but there are a couple of teams that are working on that. One team is working on bringing students back to campus, and another, how to do that. Another team is working on bringing faculty and staff back on the campus. I'm not on that, but I'm not on that team either. So anyway, so I'm not sure exactly what it'll look like if we are in person. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
If I could offer a suggestion, if anyone's looking, is ITY is actually offering some training sessions to present asynchronous and synchronous courses over the next, they just had a session this week over the next 3 weeks. And I think it would be good for anyone who's trying to think ahead to maybe, in case this does happen in the fall, how they're going to do their classes. I think it would be good just to make sure that information keeps getting out there to the faculty.
Oh, that's great. And who is it again that's offering the courses?
Let me bring this up here. It's I just had this here.
I think it's TLT, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's TLT. Yes, TLT.
Yeah. And there might even.
I can get the link if you want me to put it into the chat box. I have it brought up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I find really amazing, is that there are a tremendous amount of resources out there. TLT has a lot of resources. And so if you're looking for something, you want to find a resource, it is very well may be there. So, you look for yourself, obviously, but you can also just reach out to to my office. So you can reach out to me, you could reach out to Dave Sandor, Kevin Conaway, any of us, and we can probably help steer you in the right direction.
Also know that World Campus offers quite a few faculty development courses for teaching online specifically. I know there's going to be a couple courses opening up in the next week or two. You can actually even earn a certificate for teaching. I would, maybe try and get that information out. I mean, they may become overwhelmed, but those courses have really helped me as I've taught World Campus over the past 7 years to actually become a better teacher actually in the face-to-face classroom too.
Mm-hmm. So, the message I sent out yesterday had a bunch of links for different things. And those are things I just went to the remote teaching FAQ, just kind of basically surfed that for a little bit. I surfed our own college's website. So if you go to la.psu.edu and click on remote resources, there's a collection of links. And, just by surfing that 15, 20 minutes, I found some things I didn't even know existed. And the reason I didn't know they existed is it's being updated all the time. So, what's on there next week will be different from what's on there this week. And it's being updated in positive ways, or there's additional resources available. So it's well worth your while to take a look.
I've heard a fair number of students say if we're online in the fall, they don't want to be here. Well, they wouldn't be here, but, take courses and such. Now, one thing I told them is that this is done on an emergency basis. If we're doing it in the fall, we'll have much more lead time. It should be a better experience for them.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah, the other thing I'm kind of curious about is, presumably if we're not in person, that means the pandemic is still bad, right? And a lot of other things are closed down. So it'll be really, I'm kind of curious how that works. Like for this summer right now, even though we're online, it looks right now like we'll have more students than normal in the summer. And this is just random speculation on my part. But I wonder if part of it is that there's really nothing else to do. So how are you going to productively spend your time? Well, I might as well take these courses I need to take. And it moves me that, a semester closer to graduation. So, the economists would probably appreciate this. Like, what's the best use of my time?
I'm laughing here, yeah. It's not like you got to backpack across Europe in the fall if you can't go to class.
Yeah, besides the thing, like that's the other thing people talk about, and I just don't know this. I mean, it's not the best time to take a gap year, right? So, yeah.
Well, I know kind of along those lines and thinking about the fall, at the last Liberal Arts Teaching Group meeting, Jeff Adams brought up the question that if you knew before the start of the semester that this was going to happen around spring break, would you have designed your course any differently? And I think it's an interesting question to think about. I mean, this is kind of where we're at for the fall. Like, we have an idea that we might go remote. So what might you and how might you design your course differently? I don't have an answer for that necessarily, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think from the support for the faculty standpoint, we have been talking about, I think one of the outcomes from both the student and the faculty survey is understanding what resources we could offer. And what Campus currently does is they provide a how to learn online module for students so they are ready to go there. We weren't able to do that for the faculty or the students because of the quick turnaround, but if we need to prepare that for summer or for the fall, what kind of things as faculty would you like to see in something like that?
Yeah.
Well, related to that, for the fall, if we do go remote, we're sort of planning for class materials right now. Can the university bookstore mail out packages of books for all of our students, or how would they get those materials? Because, we have course packets and a lot of it's self-authored and everything. So I'm hesitant just to give everything digital to my students, because then they're never going to, get them from the bookstore any other semester. They'll just share them. So, and I still want the students to have the printed version of that. So I don't know so I guess my question is, what's going on with the textbook publishers and our bookstore and the bookstore's logistics to get materials to students for the fall, assuming we start out in remote?
That's a great question. It'd be worth asking the bookstore if they have plans to mail things out. I mean, it would seem like the thing to do would be just to mail it out. And if it's not a customized textbook, people should be able to order it online anyway. I don't know, people have other thoughts about that?
Yeah, the stuff from the publishers like Pearson, McGraw-Hill, that could be ordered online. I'm talking like custom materials.
Yeah.
Courses. Yeah,
so I would talk to I see Tom Fankhauser, I think you'd be worth like, if you're in that situation where you have customized stuff, I would just contact the bookstore and say, can you we be able to mail materials to students if we're teaching remotely in the fall, remotely or online? Because this is a great example, because this is such a complex situation and there's so many different factors that you're aware of if you're living it in your particular way. So for example, for you, Dave, you have these materials, right? And so there are things that might occur to you because of your situation that aren't going to occur to me. So yeah, I would just reach out to the bookstore manager and just say, look, this is our situation. Can you mail this out? And see what he says.
And I would think they're going to have a lot of work if they can do that. So probably getting to the head of the pack may not be a bad idea.
That's right. And also, alerting them to that, because sometimes the other thing is kind of like we see this with our students. I see it with myself sometimes. You don't put two and two together. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I think the earlier you let them know, the better, because they can start thinking about how are we going to do this? Because especially for your econ courses, that's a lot of students. That's a big postage bill.
Would it be something that you could convert them to PDF forms where they could actually be sent out that way?
Yeah, that's what effectively we had to do for the last part of this semester. But you know, for a variety of reasons, I'm somewhat hesitant to do that, because then it's hard to explain, because it's almost like you don't want to just give it to the students, because then they'll never buy it from the bookstore again in future semesters. They'll just share it. And also, the course pack involves a lot of writing, and if they just have a PDF, they'll never write. They'll just try to look at it and do something different, and then they're not going to succeed in the course.
How many of you were at the check-in that we had Monday? Were most of you there? Anybody not there? Okay, so just share with you something I thought was interesting. So we had a meeting earlier today with some alumni. So the meeting, it was, you know, people in the dean's office with some alumni, and one question that they had was whether we were concerned about interest in the liberal arts, students wanting to come to our college at a time such as the present, when maybe students would be more drawn towards, you know, quote unquote, more practical majors. And one thing that's interesting is right now in terms of our paid accept. So these are the students that we've accepted for admission here, and they've already made a down payment on their, you know, tuition, kind of to save their place, so to speak. College is way up. We're like, our paid accepts are like 30+%. I think it's 37% over where they were last year, and University Park as a whole is a little over 10%, which is good in both counts, right? Because of both, we're ahead of where we, you know, were last year. We don't know what our melt will be. There are a lot of factors into that. We've already talked about some of them. Will we be in person or not is a major one. But nevertheless, in this current environment, you know, people are making these down payments when they already know where they're probably in stay home and shelter, right, situation. And so there's something, at least that's one data point, but the data point indicates that there's real interest in our college. So I think that's a really good positive thing. I think it's also positive for UP as a whole that we're kind of ahead of where we were at this time last year. Again, the people are paying this money when they kind of know that about all the uncertainties. So I think there's reason to be hopeful. I mean, there's no telling what things will actually look like once September or August rolls around. But you know, I'd much rather be where we are than be like 37% behind where we were this time last year. So that's good.
I guess another question is, have you done something that's remote teaching you'd like to carry over into face-to-face teaching?
Yeah.
I found, for example, I get many more questions now with the chat feature or the Q&A feature, since I do webinars, doing a per person class. I wonder how I could translate that into my face-to-face classes.
Now, there's always the idea of having a blended class where part of it is through meetings and part of it is face-to-face.
One of the things I've done in the past is, depending on your computer policies, I've had students text me questions during class, and I lecture holding like a tablet, and the text questions show up while I'm teaching. And it's really effective because I can either answer the questions right then or tell somebody I'm getting some questions, I can't do them right now, I'll answer them you know, either in a couple minutes when they come up again, or, you know, let them know. And it's a great way to kind of touch base, but you have to kind of be able to manage, you know, an electronic device and reading questions at the same time. But I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years, and it's worked great.
I think it's a great idea. I've noticed how often, like when I'm sure you've experienced this before too, in the Zoom meeting, sometimes the chat's more interesting than what's going on in the conversation.
has Zoom become a lot more secure where, because I know in the past, obviously, a university that wants to do anything outside of Canvas. Is the university, obviously, we're sort of a situation, is it okay to continue with Zoom? Or are they going to change the platform that's be recommended at all?
I don't know. I mean, first of all, the university seems like they change platforms fairly often anyway, right? So like, we want you to use Box. Now we want you to use OneDrive. Oh yeah, by the way, here's G Suites. So there's a little bit of churn anyway, I think. I do know that one problem with Zoom that's been discussed is, this is particularly true for the World Campus. There are a lot of people who work for companies that don't permit the use of Zoom or have issues with Zoom, and often these companies are paying for the person's education through World Campus and are using a company issued computer, and they're not allowed to get on Zoom with it. So I think I guess the short answer is, I think the university, in my impression, is that they're always thinking about, is this the best platform? And they're thinking about it both in terms of security. They're also thinking about in terms of cost, ease of use, and there's always the possibility of change. I haven't heard anything about discontinuing Zoom, but I did hear about this one concern with World Campus.
Yeah, and just tagging on Richard's comments there, I attend some of the IT meetings in my role for the college, and they did have a release from the university security office saying that at this point they still see Zoom as the best secure choice for us. Certainly Teams in your Microsoft products is another good choice to use, but at this point the university plans to continue using Zoom moving forward.
Well, Richard, I know you have to go.
Yeah, I was going to go ahead and say goodbye. Thank you all for coming. I enjoyed talking to you, and always feel free to, if you have questions like any of these questions like we just talked about, you can always feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to hear what your concerns are. Try to answer your question if I can. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Do you have other questions or comments then? Things that, again, maybe you learned this semester, you like to replicate in your face-to-face classes or something else along those lines?
I know one of the things that I learned when I started teaching World Campus is it made me a much better communicator, especially written communication. Because you do say something face-to-face and you think everyone gets it, and we know they don't, because we didn't get it when we were an undergraduate student. So one thing I started that I do in my World Campus classes is I send out an introductory letter, basically who I am, overview the course, etc. And I started to do that in my face-to-face courses, and the students really seem to like that over the past 4 years I've been doing it. So I know what I carried over from my World Campus courses, which I teach, into my face-to-face is every week, or actually 2 times a week, I'll send out an announcement of what's going to be going on with the upcoming week. What do you need to do? What your readings are, just to remind them, because even though it's in the syllabus and the reading assignment, it's always good to get that reminder. And they do say that, I put myself in their situation of all the things that they're having to deal with, and having a reminder every now and then, besides what we've already given them, has definitely, I think, helped out a bit.
Other questions, perhaps, things we can address or things you found surprising with this so-called remote pivot? I'm not sure I like that phrase too much, but do you have that?
I think the transition went a lot smoother than could possibly be expected. I mean, when they first announced this, I was expecting a massive dumpster fire train wreck to happen. But I think for the most part, faculty and students just both jumped in and did it, and we continued on. And so I think it's been going pretty well.
Yeah, I've been surprised as well. pleasantly so. It's been a lot more work though, but still it's worked out fairly well, I think.
To be honest, I'm just sort of already planning on going remote again in the fall. I mean, I think not only Penn State, but a lot of universities are going to be very risk averse. And even if the virus scenario has settled down a little bit, you know, big universities are, you know, they realize they got big crowded classrooms, and they're going to want to play it safe. Because I mean, nobody wants to be known as coronavirus U. They don't want to be the university that's known for some outbreak happening. So even if it's very safe to open, I think they'll say, well, even if there's a 5% chance of something happening on campus, we're just going to close it down for the whole semester and go remote, because we don't want to be the university that happens at. And I think that's my opinion. That's actually why a lot of universities ended up closing at the same time, because like, well, that other university closed. Well, we should do it too, because if something happens, we don't want to be the place where it happens. And I think that mindset is going to continue into the fall semester, where despite the fact that there's never going to be a complete elimination of risk, campuses, at least for the meantime, are going to be very careful, because they don't want to be known as the bad place where it happened.
I agree completely. And I think in a situation like this, I mean, partly because of, you know, the kind of university that Penn State is, with all of the campuses at all the other locations, you know, we're never going to be the first one to make a decision on this. But I think as soon as the first or second Big Ten university makes a call, Penn State's going to be right there behind them doing the same thing. And I agree. I don't think with risk management at Penn State, there's any way we'll be in the classroom in the fall.
My brother's the business administrator for one of the shore towns in South Jersey, and they're already looking at probably, if there is a summer season, maybe not starting until 4th of July, but the way they're looking at it right now is it's not going to happen this summer.
So I already know that State College has already canceled Fourth Fest and People's Choice, and that's 2.5 months away. They're already canceling it. I think that seems a bit premature, but they did it.
Yeah.
If they canceled the Arts Fest and People's Choice, the start of the semester is just 1 month after that. So
has the department sent out anything, just think on the other side, for mental health? Have they sent out reminders to students and also the faculty about caps and also things to keep us not just looking out a window or apartment or a house and thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to be here for another year?
I mean, I don't know if the college has done that. I know I've sent stuff out to my students that I've found. I don't know what other people have done, or if departments, if they've done that.
I know I've sent it out to my students, and I'm always there like, hey, if you need to get a hold of me, give me a call, give me a text, send me an email through Canvas, whatever it may be and stuff, and trying to be more positive, especially with my announcements and also in class, and not harping too much on what's going on, because this is maybe the one release, and that's the last thing they need to do is then, oh my God, my world, I'm looking outside my window as a teacher and I can't do anything. I think they're looking to us as sort of maybe a little release from their day.
Yeah. I think it must be hard too. We're all adults and we've had various trials and tribulations, not like this, but if you're 18-year-old, this might be the first major challenge you faced in a way. Certainly life defining, so I'm sympathetic toward them.
Yeah, I actually coach track and field in Altoona, 7th through 12th graders. So, I also have dealt with all the 12th graders the seniors who have basically lost the rest of the senior year, and some juniors who are starting to think like, what's next year going to be? So yeah, I've been dealing with, up basically down to 8th grade, because everyone didn't get a chance to know the 7th graders this year. So it's been very difficult on them also.
Well, I guess.
The only, oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
go
Dan.
ahead. The only thing I would add is that the college has been doing some messaging around that in Clarence and Richard's emails. But Bill and Josh and Dave had invited one of the outreach folks from CAPS to join us a few weeks ago in the workshop, and they've started this new program called Life Hacks. So I'll just throw a link into that if anyone wants to share that out.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I forgot about that actually. And I guess I'll kind of throw out there too. This is not necessarily related, but a plug. If because there's some new faces here I haven't seen. If you have interest in getting on the Liberal Arts Teaching Group listserv, we meet monthly to talk about teaching related stuff, and so kind of discussions like this actually to some extent. And so if you have interest, if you want to put your email in the chat, we can get you added to the listserv.
Or you could write Josh or I.
You can email us too. Yes.
I'll put out there. Yeah, there's mine, Josh's email address if you want to be added to the listserv. I expect we'll probably be doing something this summer when we find out what we're doing this fall. That was interesting that they'll be making potentially announcement in the middle of June.
Yes, I've heard that a couple different places. So I think the provost must have said that at some meeting.
Okay. It beats knowing 5 days before classes start, as we did in
Yes.
March. Well, I don't see too many more questions here.
This has been great, guys. I appreciate doing something like this. It really does help to keep the connections going.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome.
I'm sure for you gentlemen also.
Yes, it is.
I
think
just
so.
wanted
I'm
to.
gonna head on out right now, if you don't mind. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to mention. So we recorded this session, and we've recorded the past ones as well, and we have those videos available on the Liberal Arts remote resources page. So we have a page specifically for online teaching resources, and I'll put the link in the chat here.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think, Bill, did you have anything else you wanted to touch
No,
on?
I'm all set.
Awesome. Well, I guess stay safe, and we only got a week and a half, 2 weeks left, and so get through it best you can.
All right. Okay, see you all.
All right. Bye.
See you. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Oh, just Dave and Josh. Y'all were working. Do you have a few minutes?
I have a couple minutes. Yes.